A very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you on this special talk arranged for the faculty of RVCA today. We have Dr. Janmejoy Gupta gracing us with his presence. Dr. Gupta is an architect, urban planner with 17 years of industrial and teaching experience, out of which the first 6 years have been in industry and thereafter 11 years in teaching. Presently, he is Associate Professor and Dean Research, Department of Architecture in the School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada, India. His research areas are passive design strategies for thermal comfort in dwellings, energy efficiency in buildings, and sustainability in urban planning. Dr. Gupta is an Indian Green Building Council accredited professional and has worked on quite a few green building documentations. He has a total of 15 international journal publications and 3 book chapters, which includes 6 Scopus Index Web of Science publications to his credit, and is a reviewer for a few journals, including the Environmental Progress by Wiley Publications. He has written a book on housing, climate, and comfort, covering climate responsive design principles, which he would be presenting today.
Yeah, don't read that last line. That last line was a mistake actually. That
Okay,
last line was from some different. Yeah, that's
okay,
all.
okay. Sorry, sir. Along with teaching and research, he is involved in the in institutional consultancy projects, the notable ones being coordinator in GIS-based master plan for Eluru, Andhra Pradesh, team member in Pahari Mandir Redevelopment Project, Ranchi, and in the role of co-PI for developing pedagogical subject matter for pedagogical course material preparation for the subject of energy efficient building, a MHRD project. Today, Dr. Gupta intends to talk about research funding avenues and publication opportunities for architecture faculty. We welcome you, sir, today. I would now request our principal, Dr. O.P. Bhavne, to address the faculty and welcome our guest.
Yeah, very good morning.
Good morning, sir.
At the outset, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Professor Gupta on this platform.
Thank you, sir.
Uh,
Yeah.
thank you, very- Thank you very much, Professor Janmejoy, for having readily agreed to my request of coming to this platform and interacting with my colleagues. Uh, See, if we look at the phenomenon of say how research has picked up in India, I remember uh, 80s, I could count there were some 2 or 3 only PhD holders were there. There was one Dr. Shahu was there. She was in IIT Roorkee, my professor. Then I think after that, Professor Shinde was there, who was I think second person to do PhD. So they were only across the country. There were only handful uh, people who had the credential of having doctoral qualification. Uh, this phenomenon of research in architecture, I come again that it actually picked up during last 1 decade. Actually, during last 1 decade, many young teachers are coming forward to take up the research. Primarily, one for the reason that they are interested to investigate or discover new things, for interested in the new findings, and also because this also helps as a something which can help them rise in their career. Okay, so these are the two compulsion for which we see that now many youngsters are coming forward, maybe for the sake of career advancement, and maybe not for the career advancement, but they are genuinely interested in research. Okay. uh, Now, what we have seen that unlike the engineering and the science discipline, where there are a lot of opportunities available for seeking funds, because if you look at this one, we have now 400 and around 500 architecture colleges across the country, and maybe out of that, a tiny percentage of institutions are the government institution, but largely these architecture institutions are the private institutions. So unlike the government institution which where they are privileged with having lot of government funds available to them, our private institution are actually starving for the fund. Okay, so that is one thing, that where to get fund from. And secondly, how to go about say applying for this kind of a research funds, which are the various agencies. And another important thing is that if you have somebody has done a meaningful work, and if he wants to publicize and to say get his work or her work validated, then it is important that these works are published in in the journals of repute. So uh, I could see that there are good number of faculty members now in my team who are interested in taking up the research and indulging in the publication, and they were looking for some kind of a some kind of a guidance, some kind of a direction from somebody who has a vast experience in this field. uh, I had approached to my colleague, who is colleague of old friend of mine and the colleague of Dr. Gupta, Krishna Kumar, and I said, Krishna Kumar, I want please advise me that whom I can invite to give a talk on this. So he outrightly said that please approach to architect Dr. Janmejoy Gupta, a right person. He has vast experience and he'll be a right person to speak to your colleagues. And when I approached Dr. Gupta, he readily agreed for this, and I said this would be the date. Actually, in fact, I had forgotten. He reminded, sir, we have to. So yes, he has been following it with me, and today he is there. I think that we'll have very fruitful interaction with Dr. Gupta, which will provide us some direction. Some more will be at the end of this his presentation. I'm sure that we will all be an enlightened group of teachers here, and that will help us now in pursuing our interest further. So without taking much time, I leave the platform to Dr. Gupta for his presentation,
Yeah.
and then maybe followed by that we'll have say a discussion with all open heart. Yes.
Okay.
So thank you, Dr. Gupta, being
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
and the platform is to you, sir, now.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Alisha, for the nice introduction, and thank you for the inviting me here.
Most welcome.
As Bhavne sir also said in his brief address, that uh, you can no longer separate research from architecture. And if we say that architecture doesn't really need research, that building, designing and getting a building constructed in itself is research, we are not really being objective, and we are not really saying the full truth. Because like all fields, architecture is also rapidly progressing. What architecture a decade back and architecture being practiced now in the market is totally different, and the techniques used are totally different. And if you look at the larger time span, the changes have been were even more. So it's not that architecture is unlike other fields. It's not. It doesn't need research. That's a myth, and it needs research, and it needs productive research, which will enable the subject to grow and keep up with the global standards. Because in India already we are falling a bit behind in our construction practices, in the way we go about doing our construction. And for example, in China and in even Dubai, 3D printing has come in a much bigger way. We are behind that. A lot of our processes are outdated. And one of the reasons for that is that we don't have appropriate and proper research on lines of what, say, European countries and other more advanced countries have. So we really need to work upon our architectural research. And so I'll directly start with my presentation now. So, as you are well aware, today's presentation is about avenues, modes, and methods for applying for research grants and research paper publications in journals of higher impact. And I am Dr. Janmejoy Gupta, Associate Professor and presently Dean Research of the School of Planning Architecture, Vijayawada. So, since the brief given to me by the coordinators of this program, Phani sir and Architect Alisha and Architect Jagrati, was that the research journey has to be presented. It's nothing much worthwhile, but still I'm presenting. My BArch was in 2003. I mean, I passed out in 2003. Immediately, I did my master's in urban planning. Passed out in 2005. My industrial career was from 2005 to 2011. And of that period, 2008 to 2011 was actually spent much in green building documentation, wherein I handled at least 3 buildings fully. I handled the documentation. I was on site many times. I had spent numerous time during the construction process, and I fully documented it. So as a result of that, in 2010, I cleared my IGBC AP exam. And at that time, there were not many IGBC APs. That was the initial stage of the green building movement in India, and I can say maybe I was among the first few IGBC APs who happened to be that time. Nowadays, it's become very common, and it was after that that I decided that research was more like it, and I made a conscious shift to teaching and research. On 21st September 2011, I joined BIT Mestra, Birla Institute of Technology Mestra, as an assistant professor, and so that I could carry forward my research along with my academic teaching. Because a lot of that decision had to do with the extensive green building documentation I sort of enjoyed doing, and the subsequent IGBC AP that I became. So I thought research may be more of my cup of tea. So then there was an increased interest in passive design strategies, energy efficient architecture, sustainable practices, and then I enrolled into PhD in April 2012. My PhD was passive design strategies for rural mud dwelling units in Jharkhand, considering architectural design parameters for thermal comfort. At the same time, I was involved in consultancy and research work. At that time, I was primarily, initial stages, I was a member of the Pahari Mandir Beautification and Redevelopment Plan. And consequently, I was a co-PI in developing course matter for energy efficient building, as has been mentioned in my intro. So along with the PhD, as is mandatory in engineering colleges of repute, we had to have a minimum number of scopus, unpaid scopus, high citation index journals, publications. In our case, it was 2, and that was how the process really started. But as soon as I got the hang of it, and I liked it, and I enjoyed writing papers. So there were a few good quality publications like Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, Routledge, and even Springer Nature. So I had submitted my PhD in October 2015, and I got my degree in May 2017. And in 2018 November, I shifted to School of Planning Architecture, Vijayawada. And here I've been involved in 2 main projects. One is I'm the principal investigator in GIS-based master plan for Eluru, and a team member in Andhra Pradesh State Architectural Board, the vetting of educational buildings. In the meantime, I have also presented online at the World Forum of Climate Justice in Glasgow, 19 to 21st June 2019, and I have been PhD external examiner at NIT Bhopal. Coming to current, at this moment, research activities, a project in which I am a co-PI. We have been shortlisted for the Council of Architecture, the Urban Studio Research Project. And the theme of that project, which we are doing, is Urban Climate Map for Sustainable Urban Development. We are trying to map create a urban climate map for guiding future sustainable urban development. So that's a Council of Architecture project, COA. We have been shortlisted, but they are yet to actually let us know on the future course of action. And also, I have recently published in May 2022, I finished and published a book on housing, climate, and comfort. So this is in brief my research journey. Now coming to the methodology of research, architectural research, what it is about. We will be primarily restricting ourselves to architectural and planning research and not go beyond that. So there are 2 types of research. First of all, we should understand quantitative and qualitative. And we need to very clearly differentiate between what each of them are in our head. So quantitative research is basically based on scientific methods, and it is based on data, right? And is often statistics is used on it, and it is based on measurable empirical data, and conclusions are drawn from the analysis of the data basically. Wherein qualitative, but all architectural research cannot be quantitative. So a lot of architectural research is also qualitative, wherein we are dealing on more subjective terms, and the people's perception of the changes that have been brought in architectural style. That is something which is a very, or the people's perception of retaining of vernacular elements in their traditional houses. It's something that cannot be really assigned a numeric value. So for such types of things, we need to have qualitative research, and they may be based on people's perception, people's experience, surveys, and they have to be collected through observation. So, but for an architect, both are important. Not all researches in architecture can be quantitative. So now the first thing for any research, or for starting any research proposal, or for writing any research paper, or doing a PhD even, is that the topic. Is the topic significant? Because nowadays there are too many topics similar. For example, some topics are becoming too common. For example, everybody is wanting to work on urban heat island effect. Everybody is starting to work upon some set areas. Now you have to first see whether the topic is significant and whether it's manageable by you within the time available. Then be aware of your own standpoint regarding the topic, what you feel your ideas about the topic is, because researchers have usually got some experience behind them. And then is one of the most important things, write down the hypothesis or basic premise of the research. In architectural research, in the few DRC and Research Development Committee and doctoral research committees that I am member of here in one or two other colleges across India as guest members, I've seen that people, when they begin their PhD research, they are more confused about their hypothesis. Their hypothesis is not properly written. They don't exactly know where to start and with what premise they are starting. And so then, because your hypothesis will be, you will be reverting back to your hypothesis when you are analyzing your evidence, what you are collecting, whether it be by quantitative measurement methods or by qualitative methods, you have to keep going back to your hypothesis. So, and finally, research is not simply about collecting facts. That stage is gone. That stage is UG stage. But beyond that, we don't simply collect facts. We have to analyze the facts, synthesize the facts, and suggest something new, add something new in the existing body of work. Again, like to construct a basic premise of a research and to construct a basic hypothesis for a research, we need to visualize our research. You know, we need to look into, sit quietly and look into, think hard and look into what end results we want. Of course, it will change, it will evolve over time, but it is important to do so because, you know, that the methodology we adapt for gathering and for analyzing the evidence, it should be well guided, because often again, it's one more common thing about any type of research is that people collect irrelevant data, people collect irrelevant information. So that because that thought process streamlining is not there. So it is very essential to have a clear framework in place, and that is why you need to visualize your research a little bit into the future. So if you can just look at it in that way, about what type of subject you want to do your research in. First question, of course, is is it important? Is it required? There's no point doing something which hundreds of others are doing and which is not, which does not hold much importance in the Indian scenario. Again, novelty, yeah, the innovative aspect, the novelty, the newness of the research matters. Research methodology, this is one of the weakest things that we Indian authors do, because our research methodology is often weak, because a lot of Elsevier journals reject Indian authors saying that your methodology is not well defined, well structured, it is weak. Then once we do a research, it's not the end product. It's just one step in a continuous chain. So whether our research can be verified by other researchers, this is very common in other fields, but in architecture, no, we make sweeping statements and think that we are perfect, nothing else, no one can comment anything, and we are not very open also to other opinions. So that should not be the way. We should keep the research in such a way and present it in such a way that that the other researchers can further take upon that template and verify whether it's applicable for some other place or for some other similar contextual setting. And then presentation also matters, how we finally present our research, whether it is a research proposal, whether it is a research paper, or whether it is a final PhD. It matters a lot how we are presenting our research. Literature review is another thing that is very important, because it helps to find out the gaps, because if we are not finding out the gaps in the existing body of work, where will we work upon? So then everything is done. So if we do not know the gaps in the work, then we cannot comment on how the new directions of work. So a proper exhaustive literature review is very, very important to find out the gaps. And there are various sources. Now we have online electronic databases. We have Science Direct. All major institutes should subscribe to them. We have Elsevier data sources, electronic data sources. We have Springer data sources online. Everything available online. Your institute pays a fee, yearly annual fee. It is renewable, and you get it. Now that the institutes have to decide which one they want to buy and which one they will not buy. Because if such databases are not available with the institutes, then it's very futile to expect your faculty and your students to develop research. So if we really try to streamline it about what research and the methodology to write a watertight research proposal, we have to select the topic, of course, review the literature, because that will help us analyze the gaps. Now this is the areas where I will work. Otherwise, there have been many people who have worked before me on similar areas. We think they may not have worked in our imagination, but they have actually worked. That's why proper literature review and proper rigorous literature review is very essential. Then we decide the final research outcomes of what we want to do, aim, objective. Then we select the methodology for doing, and then we be truthful in interpreting results. We often we have somehow, which we should not at all have, the slight discrepancy in the way we project the results, and then we conclude how is it relevant to how are our findings relevant to the existing theory. So on this side is spelled out more clearly. So the topic, whether it be dissertation, whatever you call dissertation, research proposal, or whatever, is the topic clear, well defined, as I said before. The literature review, have you done an exhaustive one? Have you actually found out the gap? Then third point, very important, decide what is the exact outcome you want out of the research. How you want to go about your research. That is again, first thing you have to do, one of the first things you have to decide is whether you want to go for qualitative research, quantitative research. You have to ensure your objectives are reflected in your methodology, and that each of the objectives represents the sub-phases of your research, eventually culminating in the final research outcome. Now, methodology and objectives, even in PhD scholars we see, methodology and objectives are not really matching. That can't be the case. I mean, every time from your methodology, you need to go back to see that yes, this stage of my methodology is fulfilling this objective, this stage of my methodology is fulfilling this objective, and so on so forth, and finally I get to my final aid. So that is why a clear framework helps. Methodology, fine. Now results, we have to be truthful in interpreting, and conclusions, it is not that we are going to find something absolutely astounding like yeah, and which will get a Nobel Prize. No, we will make a small but vital contribution to the existing body of knowledge, and so that the wheel goes on. So if we actually, if we summarize it further, we will see that it's basically about the research problem. Of course, first is the problem. Then the research design. Research design, by research design, we mean all these things, hypothesis and our final outcome, what we want from the research. So that is the research design, the methodology we are going to follow. Okay. Then we come to data collection method. We have to collect data. If it's a quantitative research, we have to collect data. Even if it's a qualitative research, we have to collect data. Only the type of data we collect differs. For a quantitative research, the type of data we collect will be different. The mode by which we collect the data will be different. For a qualitative research, the mode by which we collect the data will be different. Then we have to come to sampling technique. Architects are also very weak in sampling technique. No research can be done without proper sampling, because there are so many. If you are doing a research on vernacular houses of Andhra Pradesh, there is no there's huge number of vernacular houses in Andhra Pradesh of a particular typology. So you have to sample properly. Yes, from this area, coastal area, I'll select so much. From the Chittoor area, I'll select so much. From the interior Rayalaseema area, I'll select so much. And from the other areas, I'll select so much. So whatever, the sampling technique has to be justified. And after this initial step, we come to research proposal. Yes, this is how after all this is how I further streamline it, and this is going to be my exact way in which I will finally come to my desired outcome. So again, you have another round. Of course, you have first elaborated the data collection methods. Now you go on to your actual data collection. Then you analyze it. Then you report write it. It is same for any, and then you come to your conclusion. Whether it be a research proposal or whether you convert part of that research proposal into a publication, it is the same. So the stages of report, if we actually streamline it further, the stages of research are problem. Of course, where there is no problem, there is no research required. If everything is perfect, no research required. Problem. Then the data we collect to get over that problem, and in line with our research design, which is the hypothesis and the basic research premise. Then we analyze that data, and then we do action. Very simplistically put, these are the 4 stages. And then also on the top left corner, you will notice that on what all can we do research as architects. We can do research on architectural processes. Yes, the way in which the processes presently being followed, whether they are relevant or not, like the present building construction process, whether it's efficient process, whether it's an inefficient process, the architectural products, final architectural products, whether the materials they are using, whatever, and the architectural performance. This is a favorite area of research of building physics and climate responsive architecture, energy efficient building, post occupancy evaluation, all those things, how the building is performing from a services point of view. Nowadays we have MEP in a big way being researched upon. We have BIM coming. So all we can research are either of these 3 things: architectural processes, architectural products, architectural performance. And all these 3 research are actually relevant to the building industry. Because they will help improve. Our research contributions should actually contribute to the field and help in improving all these 3 parameters: architectural processes, architectural products, and architectural performance of building. And that is why post-occupancy research, evaluation research, and indoor environment quality research have become big way now. In a very major way, they have been done in Australia, Europe, even in India now it just started. So you have got the project. Now, say you have written the research proposal. So now what? Now, if you have got the project and you have first, you should ensure that your proper MOU is signed by the director, the vice chancellor, the head, the principal of the institution, because MOU properly drafted is very important. Ensure that proper terms and conditions are mentioned in the contract and the TOR document or terms of reference document, which is signed with your client. Ensure that the institute has its own research and consultancy rules framed, because unless your own institute has no research and consultancy rules framed, then there can be issues regarding payment and all those things to team members and payment to administration. So these things should be framed out with this detail out the modalities, including institute share, administration share, because they also help you out in creating the invoices, preparing invoices, and doing all those things. Team member share, etc. That the project is got through proper channel. If you are not getting the project through proper channel and something is bypassed in some way, then later there can be problems. Team formation, etc. are done as per norms and done transparently, taking all interested faculty into consideration. Appropriate subject area experts among the faculty are included. Well-balanced team with people having practical experience as well are there, and proper tendering, advertisement process, etc. are followed in selection of research associates and research assistants. Because again, in an institute, there's audit, there's all these things. So you have to be very careful. You have to follow, you have to maintain files, and you have to follow them properly. You have to ensure that proper tendering is done, advertisement processes are done, and everything is followed. Now, this is the latest research project that we are involved in. I've just taken that project, and to give you an idea of how a basic proposal, when we are submitting a basic proposal, it should look like. So it's the Council of Architecture, the Urban Studio Research Project. And here we had an introduction. We had the built environment and urban climate, how they are interacting. We talked about institutional engagement. What are the other institutes with which we can tie up regarding this study? Then we presented our methodology, which I will discuss here also. And then we outlined a plan of action and the timeline for the desired outcome. So if you look at the methodology, it was kept very simple. First, of course, is literature survey for identification of critical parameters, urban design and urban climate parameters, because that is what our study is all about. So since we are talking about twin parameters of urban design and urban climate, we talked about, in urban design parameters, we talked about morphology, built and open spaces, density. That's what our study is about. And in urban climate parameters, we studied about expectedly the climatic parameters like solar stress, urban heat islands, local wind direction, etc. Then we delineated the urban blocks in a grid of 500 into 500 meters. And then our technique we proposed to use is GIS modeling and data integration, into which in a different layer urban climate parameters will come in. So that will help us generate a simple, so keep it simple. Actually, in theory of design also, those who have taken that subject, there's a concept known as a KISS concept, keep it simple, silly, which was developed by the Lockheed Skunk airplane developers, where they said that their airplanes would be such that they could be repaired anywhere and everywhere with the simplest basic set of tools. So our architectural research should also follow simple. We should not overcomplexify things, and especially keep our methodology very simple. So other than GIS modeling, we branched it out so that urban climate parameters, for that climate analysis part, we use NVMet tool. And then based on a composite of all these, we got to our final mitigation measures and conceptual frameworks for a proper urban climatic map, because based on how much the heat stress on particular areas where, we would develop an urban climate map which would help us guide future zoning and future development in those areas. So then there's another research project which I'm taking the example of, and that is the technical support for cool roof program and finding cooling solutions for urban middle income housing. So of course, any project title we should be giving the keyword. In this case, the broad areas were the studies and the surveys taken, the location specific research and technology development, and the awareness and training on specific topics. So the duration is when the project is being submitted was said to be 18 months, and the cost was mentioned. And then, of course, you have to have principal investigator details, capability of the organization, why the funding agency should give this project to this particular organization. Why should they give it to SPA Vijayawada, or why should they give it to RV College, or why should they give it to IIIT Hyderabad? So expertise available among the faculty, whether they have relevant experienced people, building energy informatics, smart home, sustainability in built environment, etc. Then the basic program, so the background, what the project is about, description of the problem, and then the most important thing, review of the work already done. This is where a lot of our research proposals are not up to the mark. If we don't properly review the work already done, then we don't know where the gaps exist. And if we don't know the gaps properly, then we will be like a blind man we will be doing. Not very objective research. And then we will be rational for taking up the project. Why will we fund you? What is the need? We can fund someone else now, because it's a competition. Number of proposals are coming in nowadays to those bodies. Okay, so why will we? What is the rationale? And then relevance to state, regional, national priorities. So it helps if it contributes to your regional and state or national policies priorities. Then the challenges and constraints. There will be some limitations. There will be some constraints. Then the description of the proposal, the methodology detailing stepwise activities and sub-activities, the work plan, the output of the project finally. Now, for example, here now different bodies like DST will have its own requirements, SCRB will have its own requirements, UGC major project will have its own requirements, but the broad heads are similar. For example, you have to first detail out the salaries and wages. What do you mean by salaries and wages of the research assistant, research associates you employ, the technical assistant you employ? You need surveys to be conducted in many architectural and even planning projects. So more, even architecture project surveys need to be conducted. You need to outsource GIS work. But usually faculty don't have that level. Even if a few of them know GIS, they don't have that level of expertise in which they can manage to. So you have to outsource it to people like in IRS, Dehradun, and also in Hyderabad, remote sensing Hyderabad. So for that, the wages required. Consumables, you have to keep something for printer, plotter, cartridge, paper, measuring tools, data loggers, etc. Travel, you have to travel. Your research won't be based right where you are sitting, so you have to travel. Other costs, and then there's overhead, miscellaneous, stationery. So these are some basics of heads under which the budget estimates are always need to be made. And again, budget is somewhere something they very closely look. They see that if you have actually worked out the budget properly, or whether you have just filled something arbitrarily. So we need to be careful when we are doing this. And also the salaries and wages will also include the team members, I mean the faculty members shares also, because usually the way these projects do that, they will say, like in GIS master plan for Eluru, we had someone had to have housing expertise, urban planner with housing expertise. So we gave the faculty member who has some housing experience, who has either done it in housing or has an infrastructure planning, something like that. Then someone they will look with environment experience. So urban planning, or rather we look for environmental planning experience. So like that. So even that comes under this actually, team members. Timelines is very the more simple you keep the time schedule, the better. And if it depends, some projects are 3 years, some projects can be restricted to 2 years. Is usually not more than 3 years nowadays, and then you equally divide them because actually the survey and those stages take a little bit more time, so you can keep a little bit more time there, and the rest may be equitably distributed. So it's as simple as we keep it, milestones and the time schedule. That's all, and simply present it. So now that we have some idea of research funding, of course, after this presentation, we will be asking questions and maybe a little bit more clarity would be got then. The thing is that now that we know that there are a number of ways in which we can go about writing this research proposal, and what are the basic components that goes into it, what are the avenues. Now, these research grants usually follow a Jan to September cycle. Beyond September, they don't ask for it. So, and then there are central funding agencies, then there are state funding agencies, and then there are government secretariat departments. They are also looking at it. Tourism development and all the government secretariat departments. Nowadays, COA, because the one in which our latest one got shortlisted is Council of Architecture. HUDCO has always been supporting programs, research programs. Then there is CISR, then private also, Azim Premji Foundation. So then there are minor projects and major projects. If you are not very comfortable of directly straight away going for major projects, which are about 15 lakh and above budget, you can go for minor projects, which are about 8 to 10 lakh projects, even 5 lakh projects, mini projects, 1 year projects. So first set your hand doing something of a minor project and then go on to do a major project. So for this year, for my own colleagues, as Dean Research had actually shared it at the start of the year. These are the ones which are doing the round. So there was the Startup Research Grant by SERB. Then there was Core Research Grant, Startup Research Grant, and Core Research Grant were by SERB, Science and Engineering Research Board. CISR is, of course, Council of Industrial and Scientific Research. So then there was SERB is doing a lot of things, and though it's tough to get projects from them, but it also has some women-specific projects where they only promote opportunities for women. So then other than that, there is AICTE, which has its research promotion schemes, and independent researchers can get up till 10 lakhs. And then there are a number of things for young faculty nowadays. There 30 years limit with grant of 10 to 12 lakhs. They are encouraged to carry out research, PhD that is. So a research that will lead to PhD. That is a very good thing actually. And these have come of late actually. So this is being done by RPS, under RPS by AICTE. And then there is patentable development technology, wherein a group of faculty members having proven track record can go and develop some patent of their own, and for them the grant limit is one time 20 lakhs. Other than that, of course, other than SERB and AICTE, then there is a DST, Department of Science and Technology, and then there is Indian Climate Research Program, ICRP, then there is Indian Institute of Human Settlements. You have to keep looking. They have time to time, they make announcements. If you just Google their name, their websites will come. And then HUDCO building chair, it does a lot on low-cost housing. Then UGC has its major and minor research projects, which you can always apply. Council of Architecture has its own projects. Then CISR, Council of Industrial and Scientific Research. Then there are other international funding agencies as well, which includes European Union, Erasmus Mundus, and International Foundation for Science. So then iSTEM has decided to support researchers who are doing PhD or MTech or open their own startups So even that sort of thing is nowadays available, which was not really available in our time. When even if you are wanting to do PhD, that time the minimum was that you have to be a PhD to do some research project. But here they are actually supporting researchers who want to do the PhD. So, like this, again, funding will be provided for consumables, travel from home institution to host institution, and for testing charges, measurement and all those charges and whatever they are doing, whatever surveys they are carrying out, and the temperatures or whatever they are measuring, the instruments they are buying, those basic charges. Then there are also industry and institute interaction schemes which can help grow the research profile of your institute. Like as an institute, you can encourage these industry and institute partnership cells. Then you can go for entrepreneurship development cells, EDCs. You can have national facilities in engineering and technology alongside industrial collaboration. And very clearly, they also outline architecture and town planning as one of the thrust areas. So it only needs to be explored and actually looked at properly. Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, though not very relevant to architecture, but it also does some building material and related work, and where we can actually try, because industrial development and award of fellowships are can be quite boosting for young faculty. Then if you are interested in conferences, travel grants, organizing workshops in your university, then you can approach Indian National Science Academy. And then they have science and technology for weaker sections and science and society related programs as well. So there are email IDs, and you can even check in the website, their particular website. Ministry of Water Resources. Now a lot of urban planning projects and nowadays are deal with watershed management, rainwater harvesting. So you can always do research work in the field of water resource engineering, and this is assistance is provided in the form of grants. Then there are secretariat departments of state government. Every state government has secretariat departments wherein we have Department of Energy, we have Department of Energy and Environment and Forest, Department of Industry. So what we have done here is we have actually made post applications to them that we have expertise in these areas, whether you have a project for us. So you have to, because if you don't volunteer, if you don't showcase yourself, you will never get projects. Then if we are coming to publishing research, you know, one PhD can safely guarantee you 4 papers or at least 3 papers, or one research proposal can safely, you can make 2 research papers out of that, because literature review can be 1 paper on its own, because they're all, even the big journals like Elsevier and Taylor and Francis, they ask for review papers. They have a particular category which is review papers. So where you actually go for the review papers, the existing situation and the gaps maybe. And then there are a separate paper can be brought on an analysis, of course. And one separate paper can be brought on in an overall appraisal, which will include the results. So, you know, one research can form multiple papers. And if you are looking at the structure of a paper, then there are two types of structures that I have suggested. One is, of course, the introduction, the aim, objectives, scope, limitations. Then you come to the literature review. Then after that, you come to the methodology, tools and techniques. Then you come to your study area, description of the area being researched, or else the study area, the analysis, the discussion, the inferences, the detailed specific conclusions in area of research, the future scope of work, and references. And the similar to that only is the title, the introduction, including aim and objective, review of the literature, materials and methods. We are just naming methodology as materials and methods, renaming methodology as material and methods. Results, of course, results have to, before results have to be done, before results come, analysis has to be done. Discussion, summary and conclusion, references, acknowledgement. So this is just a slight elaboration of what each part should contain. And we should not overdo the introduction. Introduction should be limited to not more than 500 words actually. Literature review, as I mentioned before in the presentation, also is very important because it helps find appropriate literature should be reviewed first of all, and second, we should be able to find out the gaps. Then again, materials and methods. It is very important based on qualitative or quantitative research, what type of research you are doing, the materials and methods you involve in that research is very important. And results, again, results is very important to have properly presented results, either through whether whatever methods you have used, whether you use statistical methods or whether you do qualitative analysis. Finally, whether you have done something like space metric analysis or some other methods as well. It has to be presented properly in the form of graphs, bar diagrams, pictorial representations always help better. Illustrations, proper photographs. Discussion again should be based on the present principles. Our discussions, many of the papers I have reviewed also in Indian journals, we go for very, very, very broad, vague discussion. But discussions should also have a structure in the present principles and generalizations shown by our own results of the research. We should point out exceptions. We should indicate agreement or contrast with previously published work. We are free to do it. Nobody is perfect. Huh? I mean, we can either say that in this regard it's the same as the previous work, or no, it is different. What I have got is different, and it is different by this much. State the implications of your result. Give reasons for your conclusions. Mention your limitations of your work that ideally comes earlier, and indicate the scope for further work, future scope of work. And the summary is a summarized form of the discussion, wherein you say the problem you began with, the solution, and what your research is addressing exactly. What is the particular contribution of your research? And references, you use either Harvard style or Vancouver style, and it should be properly referenced. So just as we near the end of our presentation, the few journals where I have actually published, and so these are easy. If you go for Elsevier, building energy, it might be very difficult. They have too much high standards, and more than high standards, Elsevier journals, they want some strange mathematical model bias they have. They would only like to see those mathematical models being there, and only in those their papers always have the same trademark. Or they go for some involved mathematical modeling, which is not all of us architects' cup of tea. So if we are wanting to do a regular architectural research and do it sincerely, following proper methodology, then there are other good journals. These are also very good journals, so Taylor and Francis Routledge is one of the architect-friendly journals actually. They have a number of journals which cater to architectural topics. And though they also maintain very high standards, they have good impact factors, H index and everything, but still it's more you have better probability of getting published in this than straight away in Elsevier. So, and these are some links. In case you'd be interested in the subsequent discussion, I can click on them and show you the few of my selected good publications. First two are journal articles, third one is a book chapter, and fourth one is also a book chapter. So if you want to know maybe what is the difference in approach between writing a journal article and a book chapter. And one thing I'd like to say before we go to the conclusion part is that hypothesis. Hypothesis is what I have observed in my limited years of researching, is where we are very weak in. And hypothesis is actually, it is half of our research. And that is why it's the principal instrument in research. So and often we do the mistake of deriving the hypothesis from the data that we collect actually, and then that's fudge thing. No, that's not correct. That's not following research ethics. We collect a particular data somehow, and then we actually meaningfully we test the hypothesis on the same data, having a preconceived bias. We estimate the type of data we have collected, and then we frame it, and then we back calculate and mix and match, which is not correct, which is against the way research should be done. So it's very important to have a proper hypothesis, and though you may be knowing all these things, just a glance, there are basically the typologies of hypothesis. Simple hypothesis is where the relationship exists between two variables only. Complex hypothesis is where relationship exists between multiple variables. And the null hypothesis states that there is no relationship between the two variables being studied, and the opposite of null hypothesis is actually alternative hypothesis. If you are disproving the null hypothesis, then you are actually by default proving the alternative hypothesis. And the null hypothesis always represents the hypothesis we are trying to reject, and alternate hypothesis represents all the other possibilities other than the null hypothesis. So we should follow these simple rules and then go on to the testing of these hypotheses, because if research could be said in two terms, it is basically form a hypothesis and test a hypothesis. Because after you test the hypothesis, you will say that no, my hypothesis was correct, or no, my hypothesis was wrong. So either you reject or accept a hypothesis. And again, all these, this will become one more presentation, so I'm not going into it. How you test a hypothesis depends on how your data set is arranged, whether it's a normal distribution, whether it's a T distribution, all these, especially in thermal comfort studies and all these studies, where you have number of measurements. So how they are distributed is very important. So like the normal and T distribution. And then again, tools and techniques of testing the hypothesis. Nowadays, there are a lot of statistical tools available, but it's very important to have an appropriate sample selection. It's very important to have on-site around the year data collection. And nowadays, there is an increasing trend of using software simulation, but you can't just blindly use software simulation. The software simulation has to be validated. Otherwise, no journal, which is a respectable journal, will accept your findings. Softwares are very erratic. They throw up lot of wrong results, established software. So it has to be validated. And then there are always easy statistical solutions: correlation regression analysis, scatter plot analysis, root mean square error calculation, ANOVA analysis of variance, ANCOVA analysis of covariance, and all these things. And as I said, all these depends with what techniques you use, depends on what type of research you are doing, qualitative or quantitative. So again, this is a very favorite thing with architects, where they use software simulations to present their facts, and then they, but it has to be validated. If it's not validated by actual measurements, then it is tough for the journals to accept it. So, and just to wind it off, this is very important. If you have to grow further as a researcher, you need to have ORCID IDs. So you, right after you first publish a Scopus, unpaid proper Scopus paper, then there are a lot of fake Scopus papers. Please be aware of that. A lot of Otherwise, seemingly intelligent faculty members end up publishing in fake Scopus journals, and that is a major issue in architecture. Actually, Scopus has its actual list of journals which under which it those which fall under Scopus, and you should actually stick to that list and not go, because you can check in Schemago. Schemago will always help you to check whether it's a fake Scopus or actual Scopus. And then you should go there and properly check and have your own ORCID ID, own Scopus author ID. You should have your own Google Scholar ID as well. And because citations help also, and when you once have your Google Scholar ID, you'll know whenever you are cited and whatever you are cited. All these helps, and there's a way to find this H index in Scopus also. What is the H index? So all that is listed out here if you are interested. And but other than the Routledge journals that I showed, not Taylor and Francis, there are a few other journals also which are a bit easier to publish than the seemingly very difficult to publish energy and buildings of Elsevier. So you have ISVS journal, Scopus Index Journal on Vernacular Settlements, International Journal of Environmental Technology and Management, Asian Journal of Water, Environment and Pollution, Journal of Sustainable Architecture and Civil Engineering, International Journal of Multidisciplinary Educational Research, Indian Journal of Engineering and Material Sciences. So, and they will find other journal lists also. This is not very difficult to access nowadays, and you will find it. So, just a few glimpses of the book chapter in which I had published on energy efficient building and how I've gone about structuring it, background, and then I've discussed about what is energy model. If you want, I can show it's there in the link, hyperlink, and we can just quickly glance through it later during the discussion. So it should develop gradually and conclude something, and it's usually one book chapter is about the same length as an article mostly. So 15 page, 20 page, that's all. So this is my book also, in case you'd be interested. It is relevant to second and third year BArt, especially as part of their climate and built form or climatology courses. It's titled Housing, Climate and Comfort. And these are the chapters I had kept in the book. Introduction, I had talked about the bioclimatic approach. I talked about environment and building form, site and building design, sun and building design. Following the council appropriate syllabus only, wind and building design, architectural application. So concluding now, because I think the time has to be left for question answers as well. We have to be very consistent and very particular about the type of statistical tool we are using. ANOVA and COVA, as I was mentioning, many tools are available. We have to be very clear about our graphics, how we are presenting our case, detailing out things, and what type. There are a lot of free tools available also. Andrew Marsh tools for those into sustainable architecture. Andrew Marsh tools help to do a lot of simulations very easily. We have to have proper bars and graphs used, and to conclude, there's my book link for housing, climate and comfort, and also my there's a brief interview regarding the process that went into the writing that book, and that YouTube interview link, about 10 minutes, 9 to 10 minutes interview. That link is also here. So thank you, and for my part I'm done, so we can have questions maybe, and yeah, and anything that
Thank you, sir. The presentation was definitely very insightful, and I can tell you I received a couple of messages from my colleagues mentioning that the presentation was very well structured and very tailored to what the faculty has been looking for. So I would like to thank Principal Sir also for inviting you for us and guiding us in this process. Now I would like to hand over the session to Professor Phani Ram. He can take up the Q&A session.
Yeah, there are few messages in the chat box. I will answer them after Professor Phani Ram. Yeah. Sir, please.
Thank you,
Thank you, sir.
Dr.Janmejoy. Very prolific presentation, and goes to show your vast experience in a variety of aspects of doing research and publications. Also, a great, very valuable presentation, very thoughtfully done. Thank you so much for it, and it's a very valuable, you might say, resource for our faculty members. Now the floor is now open for a Q&A session. There is a question already put up in the box.
Yes, sir. I think I should first answer that. Could you please shed light on terms of engagement of students and studio projects in research projects? Yes, sir. I'll tell you that actually one thing, I'll be very open now. One thing is being done that students research is being used by faculty as well for publishing, and sometimes it is a bit violating of ethics, because then, for example, I have known a case where a student's master's thesis was published by a faculty with the faculty name as the first author and the students as the second author. So regarding the ethics part, it should be always the case that in such cases where a student's dissertation or a student's master's is being published, the student's name is the first name and the faculty name, it should be the second name. So that is a very simple case of ethics. Yeah, that is regarding the publication part, but basically it can definitely it can be done, because some students' dissertation and thesis work, they are of very good quality, and but they are not expected also to know the full modalities of how to put it in a paper. So if the guide or any other faculty who is with them, who is interacting with them and is guiding them, they can together publish, but of course, if it is the student's master's work or student's dissertation work or UG thesis work, then the student should be the first author and the guiding faculty the second author. Regarding their engagement in research projects, it is a bit difficult, ma'am, because research assistants and research associates are the two posts. And for research assistant, you have to be at least a BArch or a B-Plan graduate or a BE graduate. You have to have passed out. You can't be a ongoing student and still be a research assistant. And ideally, actually, for research associate post, you need to be master's. So it is you have to be BArch and then maybe MArch or M-Plan. So as informally you can engage them, but not formally as a research assistant or research associate unless they have a degree. Without a degree, it is not possible to elaborate, to engage them as a research associate or research assistant even. And regarding additional ethics, there is research ethics, the same research ethics apply to regarding like plagiarism and ownership of work, copyright rights, the same research rules that apply to other subject research, in ditto they apply to architecture. There is no separate rules of research regarding architecture. Maybe COA can look into it a bit and they can only frame the rules, but as such there is no separate rules for research in architecture. And the impact factor and H index, I'll tell you.
Dr. Gupta, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm Salila. I had asked the earlier questions.
Yes,
thanks for your responses. I just had a kind of a corollary to my first question. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah, please tell.
So I think I also was interested in knowing, because we primarily deal with BArch students, and I was also interested in the terms of engagement, because we do studios with them, architectural design studio. And sometimes there are very interesting projects that come up, and all the students are involved in all the data collection and all of that. So I was just wondering if there's some kind of a model for that, because many of them can actually be kind of developed into reports with credit to the students. Is there any particular, in your own work experience, have you come across models or have you done something on those lines?
Yes, ma'am. It can be done, and you can actually even pay them something out of the contingency funds that is there under the project head. So maybe they will be data collecting, they will be drafting the plan. So they will be working, giving some sort of technical backup. So you can actually pay them also, and if you produce the vouchers, it will be credited also. So it's not that you can't make use of them, but they can't be formally given a post unless they have at least BArch degrees. Now, so master students, you can engage them formally in a project actually, because they have that basic degree. But in this case, it will be informally. You'll have to pay them, and you can even pay them because based on their work they do, and from the contingency head, subhead. And regarding report, always any part of the project can be made into a journal article or a report or anything, provided all are given credit. The student who has worked is given due credit and is part of the paper as well.
And I guess permission should be taken as well, right, from the students?
Of course, in many cases the students themselves are willing. I mean, you can't force a student to work anyhow. They are willing, then they are working it, because it's an invaluable experience for them as well, actually.
Yeah.
For example, I'll give you a personal example, ma'am. For our Eluru project, we made use of a few of our students, M plan and B plan. For GIS related work, and and we paid them also in the form of vouchers, and we gave them a certificate as well. So that's proper, and they were interested. There's a few of them, they did it for as an internship also, 1 month internship, 1.5 month internship, summer internship. Okay. So that is the formal process actually, and if they are also benefited, the project is also benefited, and they get a taste of how actual work is done outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'll also go into the H index query, which was
yes.
put.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, H index is a direct outcome of how many times you have been cited. But then there are two types of citation. You will notice that here only I have one H index which is higher, which is 6. Because first of all, in architecture, our journals have very low impact factors, because impact factors are based on the coverage, the reach, and architecture journals are very few out of them are read. So wherein you will find a +1 impact factors very common in physical sciences, physics, chemistry journals. In architecture, it is very difficult to find even impact factors above 1 actually. So whereas in physics and chemistry, you will find journals which have an impact factor of 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 even. But in architecture, you will find the good journals, good reputed publishers, Routledge, Taylor Francis, widely otherwise circulated. You will find impact factors like 0.8, 0.6, 0.4, 0.3. So in that way, so that is the way in which H index is calculated as per only few Web of Science index journals. That is a very few, SCI and Web of Science. Not all Scopus are even Web of Science actually, okay? And SCI journals is very difficult to find in architecture. So they consider very few Web of Science and SCI. If some Web of Science or SCI journal has based on that cross-reference citations, that's what is. So on that index, you will find this is what my present, when I last snipped it, was showing. Of course, not every citation manages to find a way to their records, because it's not a foolproof method. But in Google Scholar, which includes all the other Scopus rated journals as well, which are not Web of Science or SCI, there you will find a more decent number of citations and a more decent number of value of H index. So H index basically is very easy to find. It's something which you find out of the Scopus website actually. So, how to find out the H index of a particular journal in Scopus? Maybe you have published somewhere, or you want to publish somewhere. You want to find out the H index of your. Of course, you have to start publishing something. Then only you will find your. You will have your author Scopus author ID, and then only will you get to know your H index. So you choose the author search tab. You write the author's last name and the first letter in the first name in different fields. Pick the right person from the author list, because Gupta J, maybe there are others. I found there's some other Gupta J who is a much prolific writer than me in some other field. Okay. So I found that there's one Gupta J who is actually writing many more than me, but so I have to first filter out my papers and then search my. So pick the right person from the author list. Sometimes there may be more than one entry from the same author. In that case, you can ask Scopus to merge your author data. So all this happens easily if you have a Scopus author ID. I made it long back, maybe right after my first few publications. And then it's very easy to find out the H index. So it's nothing. You go to the Scopus website and you can find out the H index. What is H index? H index is actually a reflection of your citations, how many citations you are having. Second question, why is my H index as per cross-reference and as per Google Scholar varying? Because Google Scholar has a wider outreach. It considers all types of Scopus journals, whereas here it is very few journals it considers, which are only Web of Science, WOS indexed, or STI indexed. So, but as architects, we should not be overly concerned with H index. We stand nowhere in comparison to H indexes of people in chemistry, physics, and even medical sciences and all those fields, because they are all their way of they have the same template, and they have 4-5 co-authors. And there are these agreements also where one co-author helps the other co-author. So it's difficult for us to reach their levels. We can't have so many publications. We have so much other work. We are primarily teachers. But yes, it does help to have a certain amount of H index, at least as per the Google Scholar metric. And it's otherwise very easy to find out. And so we actually go to the Scopus website. That's where we find everything, and it's self-guided. They will very easily, if you type your name, you will find, as long as you have an author ID. So that is it. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor.
Is it necessary to subscribe to Scopus as an institution? Yes, sir. I think you should, sir. Then it would further, if you are really serious about developing research, you should. Yes.
Okay. How do you manage the subscription? So we've gone through the subscription.
Yeah, for that we have to thank our very capable librarian, Dr. Y.S. Rao. He is actually managing it, and he sends yearly. He sends the Scopus list journals to us, to the heads of the department and to deans and few others, and they say that we have a library committee meeting, and there after we go through the list, we put our preferences, and then the common preferences which all of us agree, they are actually subscribed, because we can't subscribe to all the journals. It becomes very expensive. We all have limited budgets. But we try to cover all the areas being taught in our institute, architecture and planning, and then we have a class committee, which is the library committee and central library committee, and then it is decided, and then based on the common preferences and what all agree that yes, these journals should be subscribed to, and which is matching our budget, we go for it. So it's something like that actually, and I suggest that we should go for it also. Yeah.
All right, sir.
Hi, sir. This is Jagrati.
Yes.
I have 3 questions actually. So shall I start one by one?
Yes, please start.
So first is the when we are doing. I'm not into qualitative research, but when we are doing a qualitative research, there are certain stances where we do quantitative analysis also, like sampling method and testing it, and then
Hmm.
hypothesis testing. So, can a research be a purely qualitative research?
No, no, no. It can be a mixture actually, qualitative and quantitative also. Okay. So even if it's basically a qualitative research, as you said, you will have to use quantitative methods like statistical methods some places to guide your research. So it can have a little bit of quantitative methods as well. But you have to be careful to not get confused and actually suddenly you start off with a qualitative research about people's perception, and you should not end up with giving a whole jargon of statistical tests and saying that and presenting your results in such a way that the people's perception and the survey questionnaire and the architectural parameters you considered, all those get forgotten in that statistical result. So, but at a certain stage, of course, like sampling techniques, the amount of samples you choose, and even you may even go on and use some statistical method like AHP, even in qualitative method, right? Analytical hierarchy process to rate which of these qualitative aspects you will give more importance to and which you won't give more importance to. But the essence should start, if it's starting as a qualitative research, it should end as a qualitative research with, yes, some statistical methods used in between. Yeah.
Okay, sir. And the
Second question.
second question is that I have a paper which is selected in an unpaid international conference, and the same of which has been, but the conference is Scopus Reference. Also, the same topic has been selected for a book chapter, which is Springer Nature. So, which should I proceed with according to the weightage and
You should
reputation of
proceed
the
with
committee?
the Springer Nature book chapter because it's unpaid, na?
Unpaid, sir.
Yes, then you proceed with the Springer Nature book chapter actually. Springer Nature is good. It is even Web of Science indexed actually, maybe. So, or at least Scopus. So, you can proceed with the unpaid book chapter.
And the last question is that, as you were mentioning about international researches and the collaboration we should do with international organization, so how does the cross-border research work, and what would be the implications of the same in government cases if we have any government project and we want some collaborations from outside? So,
Yeah, in government, usually the cross-border collaborations happen in government projects only. Okay, so if you approach European Union with some sort of project, like Binucom and Binucom at SPA Vijayawada happened that way, building
yes,
resilient
yes, sir.
communities, and okay. So what they did was that they approached the European Union with this project that we have this project and we want to collaborate with you, and they also agreed. So you have to approach with government projects. European Union has a lot of projects actually. They want to do it in developing countries, and they have to do it also. A certain part of their fund, as I have heard, is allocated for doing projects in these developing countries like India, which they still refer to as India as developing country. So they need to spend their fund allocation there, so they do it. So that is the way actually.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, other faculty.
There is a question from Professor Bikramjit Chakravarti. He has put it in the chat box. Would you like
Yes,
me to
sir.
read it?
Yeah, yeah. No, sir, I am reading it. No issues. I'd actually say that your second part is actually what they do. They are actually neutral in the process. They don't do advocacy. Like each of the separate funding agencies have their own particular set of requirements. Like Department of Science and Technology is very much into specific technology related projects, and then ACRB will be into engineering and research projects. They will have their own criteria on which they will judge your project. Maybe as the broad subject areas, they will include architecture and sustainability and something like this. but while judging the project, they will have their own guidelines, and that they won't change. So whether an architecture college faculty has submitted the proposal, or whether a civil engineering college, they will judge it on their own. I know this because when I was doing my PhD, I, along with my supervisor, we decided to make my own PhD easier. We applied for major research project of UGC, and somehow we got shortlisted on a similar area as what my final PhD topic was. And since I was obviously not a PhD then, I was doing it, but I had written the proposal and everything, but the PI was my supervisor. So when my supervisor went to Delhi UGC to present in the final A, then there were no architects in that panel at all. There were two civil engineers who were sitting on the panel, and they began asking all questions from civil engineering point of view. I was not there; only my PI went. But that is what my PI reported later, that my supervisor rather, that they were not willing to really understand the architectural point of view on which that entire project was based, thermal comfort and everything, and passive design, iterations and everything. So they were fully on a civil engineering point of view they were approaching, and that's how we could not make it finally. We were not given the grant, some else project. So they actually, that is the problem with research here. Architecture is actually at a disadvantage. All these bodies, DST, SERB, even UGC, here you will find very rarely architecture is getting, even other than IIT Kharagpur and IIT Roorkee actually, and one or two NITs actually, which are very much in the engineering mode, and which also know those tricks better, how to present it in that format. It is very rarely nowadays. A few colleges have started getting, but that is where we are at a disadvantage, because they don't do that advocacy thing at all. It is, they have their own set of requirements, and they will include our subject area also in that. But finally, whether they select or not is based on the panel that is reviews, if at all it's shortlisted, and whether it meets their set of requirements. And they prefer very clear-cut proposals, and sometimes architectural research proposals get a bit vague. They want clear deliverables, clear aims, and their budgeting part they pay a lot of attention to. They say, why this budget, that budget, they will, so in that way. So if I could answer Professor Vikramji. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. I understood. Yeah.
So, if there are no further questions from our faculty, we would like to move on, and Alisha will take the platform again. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Janmejoy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Phani sir. I would like to request Jagrati to present the vote of thanks now.
Uh, yeah, so good afternoon, all. Uh, I'm sorry if I sound a bit nervous. When we have our faculties on board, I think we always get nervous. So, having you, sir, in our studios as a teacher and having you today as a speaker, I've always learned a lot from you and will be learning in future as well. Therefore, it gives me an immense pleasure to present the vote of thanks today. As
Yeah,
an
thank you.
aspiring researcher and academician, we always look for the opportunities to learn from the inspirational professor like Dr. Janmejoy Gupta, sir. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to sir. Thank you for sharing your valuable time and knowledge on the topic of research funding avenues and publication opportunities for architecture faculties. I would thank our principal, sir, Dr. O.P. Bhavani, sir, for initiating this event. I would also thank Professor Phani Ram, sir, for the thoughtful question and answer session, and Professor Alisha, madam, for conducting this session. Thank you, Sanjeev, for all the logistic coordination, and thank you all for active participation. Uh, Thank you.
Thank you, Jagrati. Principal sir, would you like to say something and close the session? Yeah.
Before we call off this meeting, I would like to thank Professor Janmejoy Gupta full-heartedly for his very informative presentation on research funding avenues and publication opportunities for
Thank you,
architecture
sir.
teachers. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank
And
you, sir.
we certainly look forward more opportunities to interact with you.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sure you will oblige us in future also.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Professor Phani Ram. Thank you, Alisha. Thank you, Jagrati, and all my colleagues for making this program success. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Professor Janmejoy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Janmejoy sir, for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Janmejoy sir.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.